Hello, and welcome to the Focusing Way podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. I'm your host, David Battistella. Today on the Focusing Way podcast, our interview with Wholebody Focusing founder Kevin McEvenue. As we learn more about focusing, we learn that it is a bodily process. We rely on the body in focusing as a way to inform us. We want to feel and experience things through the body at a bodily level. We keep our body company. We endeavor to listen to its subtle messages. We sit with the things that may start out tight and confused, and we experience shifts in the body that may have been there for years, blocking our life force or our sense of rightness. Kevin McEvenue developed a form of focusing that has come to be known as whole body focusing, and he joins us today to share more about what he discovered through whole body focusing. You mentioned a word we hear often in focusing, and that's wisdom, and particularly inner wisdom. And I'd just like to take a moment to read a quote right now that I found on your website, which states, "I think what still captivates me the most is how this inner wisdom can awaken, come alive, and open up my life to new possibilities with perfect timing when I'm ready to accept its challenges. And it offers the same for others, each in their own unique needs and readiness. It's as though we're all part of this vast wisdom, working in all of us together." Could you share a little bit more about this wisdom?
Well, first of all, I like that you read it back to me, because in that sense, I hear it freshly, and I can own it because you're noticing me. So I may have written it and long forgotten it, but the very fact that you're reflecting it back, which is part of our focusing, allows me to own it differently than I originally did. But it is, having said that, that is the essence of my own experience of the core of this work, is that relationship between my sense of myself and my sense of the larger power that dwells within me, and how you might describe that. And I remember growing up as a Catholic, that you had a lot of training and education, attitude about faith and belief, but it never really touched me. I didn't really believe it, let's call it. I'm not good at believing things. But how can I phrase this? I learned a way to invite an experience of yourself where you're actually physically engaging with the wisdom that's greater than you. It's not a thought. It's not a belief. It's actually a physical experience. It's a simple one. And in my exercise, one of the ones I use is to invite the body, and particularly the arm raising, in this case, to do something in its wisdom that is not of my making. So I invite the body to lift its arms, and I resist any attempt to help it. And that brings me right to the edge of my control system, and a kind of challenge to, is there something in me that knows how to do that even better than I do? And when I'm able to help people go through that experience, they know that they've touched into something they had no idea existed, as a kind of internal wisdom. I'd like to go back to it. I remember telling this to Mary McGuire was the head of the Focusing Institute for many years. She was in charge of training and worked directly with General. That's how it all began, really. And she told me when she was in church, was a young girl. She was head of the nuns of the not Cigarette. Just name escapes me. She looked at her finger, and for some reason she invited her finger to lengthen or extend. And it did, all independent of her, and was such a fantastic experience. She said, now I know there's a God. And it's that kind of internal physical experience where your body originates in its wisdom, something that we don't try to make happen. So there's a gulf between I need to make life work versus allowing life to flow and to work itself in an effortless way. Because when the arms raised or the finger extended, it was completely effortless. It required the engagement of the whole body to facilitate that simple movement, and it was joyful and revelational. So it's the St. Joseph Nuns. Mary McGuire was the head of the St. Joseph Nuns in Ontario. So that's in the teaching of whole body focusing. That's one of the major building blocks is to experience what it is to have this what's called inner directed movement, a movement that's not of my own making. And that really complements being with a felt sense of something and allowing it to reveal itself that's not of our making. So we have always an expectation of what we would like to have happen, but there's a deeper wisdom that facilitates what wants to happen, which can be quite different from what I want to happen. And in the end, we begin to trust that more.
Would it be, it sounds like what I'm sort of hearing is that there's this inner wanting, and then there's this wanting that we maybe, I'll call it for lack of a better thing, a mental wanting compared to sort of a bodily wanting, and sort of resolving the two or finding the place where those two become one thing. Is that, am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, it's I want something. It's like the small self wanting something, but it doesn't have the overview or the picture of the larger wanting. That's what my body actually needs. Think in terms of relationship. I want that person, but that may not be actually the person that I need to be in relationship with. And so it's a tug of war between the larger wisdom of myself, and it isn't easy because I had some level I have to give up my I want it kind of attitude that you can almost feel it. There's a pull into that. I want it is a tightening of the whole nervous system, and I'm going to have it. And take it a little further. Versus, well, what's wanted here? And then information flows of what might be needed that's more appropriate to our particular situation. And that will feel very different.
Kind of like accessing the body's computer.
Yeah, and it's the computer accesses itself effortlessly. It simply lets you know. I like the word informs you versus understanding something. You're being informed about the situation. It's sort of like that. It's coming from something inside yourself that you've asked a question or you've put out a desire, and then the body informs you of what that might look like given the particular circumstances. The body senses where you are and what you're ready for.
So just in that vein, could you speak a little bit about what you've observed about how the body speaks to us?
Yeah. There is no one way that the body speaks to us. And what do we mean by body that speaks to us? How we become informed from inside, and how it first came to me. And I think, so I can only give you an example. I can't say there is a way. I can say what has happened to me. And I was about, I think I was about 33 years old. And I was lying on an Alexander table being worked on. I think that's probably why I became an Alexander teacher, thinking that that was the answer, which it wasn't. But I had an experience because my body in that way of being worked on was very relaxed. And then I heard this voice inside of me literally tell me what my situation or my possibilities were. I'd had these series of back operations that had gone quite wrong, and they were being corrected, and they dropped me on the operating table. They did everything wrong, it just became humorous. That's my reaction at that point was not despair or anger, was simply a laughing and get me out of here kind of thing. So I was looking at alternative ways of dealing with this spine problem. So this voice came and said, named what my possibilities were in a very gentle way. I could do this now, and I could do it later. I could much later. It just gets easier if I work at it now. What was different was it was a voice that I'd never heard before, and it was different than any voice I'd ever heard. Mostly voices I heard were commands or demands or telling me what to do. This was a very different voice, and all I can say is I could trust that one. I don't know why I can trust that one, but I did. And I acted on it. And I was the investment business. I retired at that age, and I just went to England and started to study in the Alexander world. And financially, everything fell into place. I had no knowledge of what I was going to do. I did it. The money was there as I needed it, and I completed it. It's like I was suddenly, when I went along with this voice or this way of guidance, I seemed to have been taking care of myself. Something took care of me. And it's not, and I talked to other people at that time who were going through this kind of training, and there was a similarity of experiencing when people were in sync with themselves, doing what seemed to be guided by a larger wisdom. They seemed to be taken care of in ways that were unexpected. So that's one way, on a more spectacular way. And that was an intervention kind of voice that I had no idea existed. And it's happened subsequently in various ways throughout my life. Sometimes through a voice, but sometimes, but it's often, but in the end, it's a guidance. I kind of know what to do. Something in me tells me this is it, to do that. And I do it. And when I give my consent, which is the key thing, when I give my consent to it, the whole thing seems to blossom and unfold in a way that I couldn't imagine.
As you're saying that, it strikes me that many, as that experience continues to happen, that it might get easier, but sometimes we drift, and sometimes we come back to that experience again. It could be called being in the flow or something, like I'm in the flow now and I'm not now. And there could be a sense that inner talk, let's say, that says if I had done this, then this would have happened, And we're then not operating from that sort of place of rightness. And that, I guess what I'm really getting at is, could you zero in or focus a little bit more on that consent aspect to what you were just talking
Yeah, well, you
about?
brought up two things, but one of them is consent, and that's an important piece of it, is that I'm guided to do something, or there is something that is happening in me that obviously is desirable. Giving consent to that seems to set up the nervous system to facilitate that direction. It may not be complete. It may have been just have been an experience in the moment. But by giving it consent, I'm choosing that pathway and those leads, those molecular systems moving in that direction rather than another one. And that over time, that has a fundamental change in the organism itself. Because I've made a choice in life that way. The patience is that the end result may take quite a lot of time to be realized. Also, and as we're addressing it, sort of what you're suggesting, there are bends in the road. Let's say there's a new direction in life. I will be presented with challenges to support that choice and challenge my intention once again, that's what I really want. So I'm being strengthened in that direction, both by, I would call it by challenges this time are formidable, but the ones that I win. Whereas as a childhood, I would have challenges where I didn't win because of setup. But when the universe presents, or God presents us with challenges to affirm the rightness of that choice, and sometimes it looks, I can't get through this, or it's big, and I can go into the pits of despair or something. But this time, there's a winnable quality there. It's a challenge that I can overcome if I persist. And then that's where the grounding, this is where grounding is very important, where if I maintain my sense of myself and don't disconnect from that, or go back to it if I've lost it, then there is the larger wisdom, the whole body, where connecting to reality, a larger whole that has the resources it needs to help us through these challenges. And we keep coming back to ourselves, connected to the body, connected to the ground, connected to the atmosphere, connected to life. The resources are there, and they help us through in a way we couldn't imagine at that time. But yes, the temptation is to fall into despair. I can't do this.
Yeah, there's so much rich territory there but maybe what I'll do in this moment is just, I might share another quote if that's all right. But this was something that came from one of your articles, which I really appreciated, in which the subheading is "A Time for Self-Loving." And just a quote, "One day when I spent time with myself like this, what came was a deep self-loving experience that in words might have said, quote, when a part of me feels loved, it awakens to its own healing."
Yes.
Could you speak a little bit about that?
Well, I'll go back to that kneecap. I noticed the knee. It was a little bit feeling sore, a little bit swollen. But when I put my attention to it in a kind of open-hearted kind of way, how are you right now? Without judgment, just letting it feel my presence with an openness, open-heartedness. I wouldn't even call it I'm going to love you kind of thing. I'm just there. And the way that I'm there, it feels loved because I'm there. And when that feels loved, it can open up to its own consciousness in a way it can't. It needs a human heart, a human consciousness to feel itself in a way that this is what we as human beings bring to a situation. It can be a need, it could be an animal, it could be a tree, it could be anything. Our awareness and with an attitude of openness allows that, whatever that is, to open up to itself because it feels our presence in a way that's loving. It's a strange definition of love. It's not putting my arms around and hugging you, I love you. It's being present to and accepting you just the way you are. You then feel heard, felt, and accepted. And another word for that is you feel loved. And that opens up in you something that I would call a coming together or a healing or an expansion. You open up more to yourself. You begin to love yourself because someone else is there in that way. It's almost like a barometer of relationships. When I am with someone with a similar attitude, and there's a good, neat connection between us like we're doing right now, I become more me, not less me. I feel more self-love. I can appreciate me and the voice, the things I'm saying to you make a difference. If you were with me as an interviewer, and I've had this before, when you're really not there and not interested and not present, I would behave very differently. I would probably feel cut off. I feel judged. I feel alone. I think alone would be a good word. And then I go to another place and what should I say here? You know, I got to be clever here, or I got to get that attention, or I got to do something. That would have a very different outcome.
One that's perhaps a little less experiential, and that's kind of the whole idea of focusing and sort of enhancing our whole experience of ourselves and living, and that carrying forward energy. The one thing I'm still a little bit curious about is, and I wanted to hear just a little more about the arms exercise, and I wanted just for myself a little more clarity on how that works with whole body focusing.
Well, it's a specific exercise, and it isn't even, I don't even call it focusing, because it's inviting something that's kind of unusual. I often do this at summer school, when we have often the whole group, when it can be easily at the 100 people in that group, so it can be a big group. I just, first of all, I demonstrate my own experience of inviting the body to do something. In this case, it's a simple raising of the arm. So you do that and in your own way, the familiar way, and then you invite your body to do it in its wisdom. I set it up a little bit because I get them to stand, and I let them, if they're feeling a little bit of swaying, I let that swaying happen so they're not stiffly on their legs, so they're grounded. And when they put out this invitation, and only they can do it, I can't do it for them, to do this something for themselves, they step back and they are open to whatever comes, regardless of what was originally intended. And what comes may have nothing to do with raising the arms. And in very practical terms, it happened. I explored that because I was working with another long-term focuser who was very good at focusing, but from the head down to, she could not allow her body the freedom to do something. She needed to be in control. And so my issue was, how do I get her into her body so the body becomes a part of her experience? So that's where the inspiration came, to get the element of control. The body, the mind's always controlling the body to do everything. What would happen if the body did something of its own volition that was even better than what my mind said it could do? So it begins to gently open up the possibility of this other mind-body experience to be part of the focusing experience. It changed it. Because once the body becomes alive to itself in that way, it'll never go back. You won't forget that one.
And that's something we've all sort of spending any time around the focusing community. I'm sure we can all appreciate that moment when things inside us or the body awakens to us and we awaken to it, and there's this whole new paradigm that seems to open, a whole new wisdom that maybe we even had the sense just on the outside at the onset that it just might be there. And then that sort of discovery that, well, it is. That's a beautiful moment.
Yeah. And that's where someone else's presence to affirm your experience is real. Helps you own that experience, hold that experience, and asks you to perhaps give your consent to it. So it's not only an experience that you had in that moment, but you're anchoring it and grounding it in the sense of acceptance that this is me, and I want that.
It's so lovely. I really would like to thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
Well, thank you for the research too. I appreciate the depth of looking at what this particular person's doing, and the quotes and I can feel that you took the time to prepare for this time together, and I appreciate that. That makes it work for me.
Wonderful. Thank you so
You're
much
welcome.
again.
Bye-bye for now.
You've been listening to the Focusing Way podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. I'm your host, David Battistella. Please take a moment to visit our website at thefocusingway.com.